jail. The prison band was there, they began to wail. Hotel California. It seems like years since it's been clear.
It's a party in the USA.
My name is Daniel J. Duarte. I was born on September 15, 1938.
That's Santana. And as we discussed, I will fall in the baby boomer generation.
My name is Watsala Bhatt. I'm from Generation X.
Julia Satterthwaite, Generation Y.
My name is Anushka Tyagi, and I'm a millennial.
Then I think I got my first CD player when I was in 6th grade, and I got 2 CDs that day. So those were like my earth-shattering moment of music for me. One was Green Day's Dookie, and the other was Ace of Base. And I played those things all the time. And Ace of Base is famous for their song The Sign, and I often put that on repeat, and my brothers would go crazy.
So I remember a lot of like Eminem, like Disney Channel music, Miley Cyrus, what was I think, Black Eyed Peas. I used to definitely like, listen to that a lot, like in middle school dances, used to all kind of be about that. We used to do a lot of stuff in like elementary school with a bunch of Disney Channel music and like Party in the USA, and that was like everyone's like hit, like top song. So that kind of stuff really.
In terms of when I was growing up, goes back to the 70s. And so, people like the Beatles were very popular, Elvis Presley, Carpenters, Neil Diamond, ABBA,
Frank Sinatra, Doris Day.
Then, at the perfect time in 1997, right after my freshman year of high school, the Lilith Fair sort of blossomed and boomed, which is like a all-female performance that was, I think, started by Sarah McLachlan. And so there were these giant concerts that would travel all over the country, and it was female-only musicians. So that was pretty much the most epic music experience that I remember, is going to the Lilith Fair. And there were all these different stages, and you could go see Jewel, and you could go see Sheryl Crow, and you could see the Dixie Chicks, and you could see the Indigo Girls, and you could see Alanis Morissette, and Sarah McLachlan, of course. So I just was really inspired. It was like, it sort of reminded me of some of the images that I saw from the women's marches more recently. That's the same kind of positive female energy that was present at the Lilith Fair. It was at Pine Knob, which has now been renamed something, but I still call it Pine Knob in Michigan. And I sat on the blanket on the hill with some of my girlfriends, and we just sort of fangirled, I guess, over all of the different acts that would come up and perform. I don't remember a specific moment. I think that was the first time I smelled pot. So I was like, what is that smell? And so I think that's the first time that I learned like what that smell was. So I can remember that, but that's pretty, it's not necessarily the best part of the fair, but I don't know, it's just like an interesting cultural experience.
I think there were different genres of music, right, in the 70s. Like, one genre was disco music, right, popularized by, like Saturday Night Fever, the disco dancing, Donna Summers, and so forth. And so I think that influenced the generation a fair bit. And even earlier, if you go back to sort of the 60s, there was sort of this movement towards, you could say spirituality, but it was also escapism. in some ways, right? People getting high on drugs and this and that. And I think the music added to that sense of freedom and liberation and all that.
And I think music is one of the key ways that teenagers learn to develop their own personality. I think that's the time where teenagers especially sort of learn about who they are, and what kind of music they want to listen to can help them shape that identity piece. I think in my generation there was a lot of like grungy, rocky, angsty sounding music, and when I was in high school it was perfect. Like I remember being in the upstairs of my friend Tegan's house, just like screaming out the words to Alanis Morissette songs with my girlfriends. Like we just thought it was the coolest thing ever. Did we feel that awful in our personal lives? No, but it felt really fun to like yell along with her CD and just sort of act out that we were like super angry at this guy who had done us wrong. So that was fun for us to like, it felt like a good emotional release to some extent.
I feel like music definitely was something that it's definitely like a bonding sort of experience with a bunch of people that are the same age as me or like same generation, like millennials. Like everybody kind of knows like all the songs. Like I'll say the song or like I'll say an artist and I'm like, oh my god, yeah, I remember that, or like remember like when you were young and we did this. And now when I like tell my little siblings that, or like sometimes like tell older people that, they're like, what is that, like what trash are you listening to? Or like my siblings will be like, oh, like I don't even know who that is, or what show was that, what song did you just play? So definitely it's something that is very important and very like, I guess, meaningful to every person and every generation itself. It's what kind of like differentiates each other, and it's definitely a thing that can influence a lot of people to, you know, come together, and like it definitely creates memories, because like, you know, when you listen to a song you like immediately think of like the time that you had first listened to it, or what was going on in that time of your life when you were hearing that song. So I think that's cool.
I think another indelible impression in the minds of people in you know, of baby boomer generation folks would be the Vietnam War that the U.S. waged for many years. There were a lot of protests and so forth. So that I think was a pretty significant marker. I remember some of the protests surrounding America's involvement in the Vietnam War. There was particularly a black protest. I think, in fact, in the Mexican, when the Olympic Games were held in Mexico, and I think some of the black U.S. athletes protested U.S. involvement, you know, with a particular kind of salute, you know, one-arm salute with their arms raised.
And then the 9/11 happened. That was very sad, and it was, I remember all the 24 hours kind of, the news was just about World Trade Center, how the two airplanes came, and I remember watching an airplane coming and just going through that tall building, and immediately big cloud of dark smoke, and then all the buildings are crumbling down, and people are just screaming and crying, and all the ambulances and the fire truck and all that. And then I remember President Bush, he was the president at that time, he was coming to that place and giving his speech and comforting the victims. Felt very sad.
Yeah, I was at work. I was working at Martin, and I was on the assembly line, soldering and stuff, electronics, and they announced it over the loud speakers, and that's time I was at work, shocked. I couldn't believe it because I always thought that happened in the old times, like a couple times and all that. But this is modern times. It happens to me.
Well, I remember watching the news footage as it was happening. I remember feeling really stressed about getting to class on time because I didn't want to miss anything. And it wasn't an age like we have now where you could see everything minute by minute live on social media or through some streaming service. So I remember walking very briskly to my biology class and feeling a huge sense of relief when I got there and realized the news was on so that I wasn't going to miss large portions of it. I also remember being really confused because even the reporters were really confused about what was happening. After the first plane hit, people thought it was an accident. And it wasn't until the second plane hit when you could see it on the reporters' faces, like, holy shit, this is on purpose. This is a big deal. I remember feeling just devastated watching the footage. And I mean, you could see people's bodies. They were jumping out of the building. I remember thinking, like, what would I do if I were in that situation? Would I rather burn, get squished in a building, or just jump off and, end it myself? And I just remember feeling like devastated for the families and for the people who were in that circumstance. So one story that I remember being really personally connected to was a memoir written by a woman whose husband was on the plane that crashed in the field, I think, in Pennsylvania. And the title of her book is Let's Roll, and those are the last words that she heard her husband say when he and the other passengers decided to break into the cockpit and stop the terrorists from crashing the plane in whatever its intended location was. I believe they've identified the White House was maybe its target, so they wanted to try to save other people's lives, and they realized that if they were going to be going down for sure, so why not try to do it somewhere where it's not going to hurt other people? So I was really moved by that story, and I remember just sobbing over the pages of this book, reading about this poor woman, and just sort of her strength, I guess, really inspired me. And so I think the way that 9/11 shaped me is it reminded me that you can't look at terrorist attacks as just numbers, because then you become sort of numb to those facts and you don't really, it just can kind of brush off your shoulders. But instead, the way that I choose to sort of think about things like that is to really read about the personal lives of the people who are impacted. I think that helps me keep perspective and continue to fight to decrease situations like that in the future. It's the September 11th attack was devastating, but some of the stories of like hope and unity that sort of came out after that were really inspiring.
Yes, I think so. Because people, as a result of U.S. involvement in the war, got disillusioned with their, government leaders and politicians. There were slogans like, make peace or make love, not war, and people were kind of disillusioned by the whole affair. I am, you might say, on the young end of the baby boomer generation, but I think in general, people who are born in the time frame that defines the baby boomer generation had sort of a stronger kind of traditional work ethic and grounding in sort of universal principles, you might say.
But I remember when in 5th grade my little brother was born, and we had just gotten a Wii that day, like the day that he was born. And I was like so excited because I just really wanted a Wii, and like everyone had it. So he literally, the day that he came in and my mom brought him home, like I just got the Wii, so I was like so engrossed in like playing the Wii. I was like, I don't care if I have a sibling, like I've got a Wii, like that's just so freaking cool. And we always like joke and say that my brother was basically born with like a Wii remote in his hand, because he just, the minute that he was born, he was just like in like technology and in internet. But with me, it's like I still had the experience of, you know, being able to like still play outside with my friends like after school every single day, instead of coming home and like watching TV or like doing all that kind of stuff. So definitely that's the way that like I'd say the internet really shaped my childhood. I guess I would say we're kind of in like a good middle where we know how to use it, because like, and we can learn more, and we already have a lot of knowledge about it because it was kind of a part of our life as growing up, and we have a lot of these opportunities that can be used with the help of technology and the internet. But we're not like, you know, the little kids who are just like, oh, I don't even know what life was like without it, or like this is just, you know, life was always like this with like an iPhone in my hand, which isn't true. Or even like the older generation, when either they can't use it or they think it's cool but they're hostile towards it because they're like, everyone's on their phone these days, or they don't have enough time to learn about it. So I think it's a really nice middle ground that I guess the millennial generation is in, where we've had that but can also relate to times where we hadn't had that.
I don't remember there being a strong adult presence at all. I remember my parents leaving me in charge of my brothers when I was fairly young. I think I was 8 or 9 when they were like leaving me in charge of everyone, and I can't blame them. They would just need to go like run an errand or something, like go get some milk. I don't know, I think maybe it also had to do with no one knew where we were because we didn't have cell phones, and I don't know, like there was just less, like no one ever texted me and was like, where are you? I definitely think that people who were raised in Generation Y are really creative and sort of innovative in a way that I don't think is the same as today, because we had no rules, and so like we invented our own game and our own currency and our own rules of engagement. Like that's crazy. No one does that now. And I think that now when I take my own kids like to the playground or to different events like soccer or t-ball or something, there's always an adult telling them what to do or instructing them the way that they should be interacting with other people or with the thing. Like, that's not how you swing on the swing. This is how you swing on the swing. That's not how you do the monkey bars. This is how you do the monkey bars. Oh, don't do that to that person. And they intervene a lot. And that intervention, I think, makes people worse at conflict resolution and less creative. So if we're always telling our kids like how to play things, or if we're constantly intervening when there's some type of fight or disagreement, I think that we're doing them a huge disservice.
County jail. The prison band was there, they began to wail.